All right, we're recording this. So, welcome back to Sunday's Zoom on Iraqi Style with Mr. Brando and guest. First of all, I want to say hello to everybody out there. Hope you had a great week. Of course, this is sponsored by the Noble Institution, the #1 healthcare provider in Texas, and soon coming to a clinic near you. If you have aspirations of being a trader, if you have aspirations of learning about stocks, cryptos, educating yourself on the Iraqi market, I would say that you need to take a look at our website at thenobleinstitution.com. Give us an opportunity to earn your business. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. The only time you're ever disappointed in a Noble event is one that you didn't make, okay? Let's say that right now. Now, I took some notes, and I'm sure everybody else has kind of a slight agenda of today's meeting also. We know that these meetings are more about us learning and grasping the Iraqi Dinar instead of a lecture style. We don't do shows, right? Shows, who wants to watch a television show? I'm not entertaining. So I think, does anybody want to start the week off with something? Because my first thoughts are on budget and on deletion of the zeros and on exchange rate of the dinar. So anybody want to start off with anything before I jump just full crazy into it? We can comment as we go. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Come on, kids, get excited. Somebody put a comment in my thing, and I thought, that was dumb. They go, well, why do you get so hyped over your shows? And April and I were talking, and we were talking about investing in Starbucks. And I was like, heck yeah, put me down for a couple Starbucks. I'd love to have some Starbucks. She goes, yeah, we should invest in things that are profitable, of course, that's what makes sense, but B, things that we're passionate and like, right? If I didn't like something, why would I buy into it? Or if I don't believe in something, why would I buy into it? And if I don't have that passion towards it, then I automatically reject it. If that's just me, I mean, I reject it. I'm like, dude, if I have no passion towards it, I really don't care about it, right? So since nobody wants to interrupt, I'm going to read you my thoughts, okay? So I thought it was really interesting this week in an article that I saw that first said the budget could be delayed as much as 6 months when they put so much effort into getting it into the House immediately and getting it passed because of the budget deficit. And it doesn't come as a surprise to me, but what did come as a surprise that in the second paragraph of that article, it said, and I quote, the budget needs careful study because the deficit is large, duh, and the numbers are large, duh, but it came into difficult economic circumstance. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So it is subjugated to a thorough study, noting that it is not only controversial, but the reforms are inside of it. So I started thinking, whoa, that's kind of crazy. The reforms are inside of it? That's crazy. We all know what reforms we're talking about. We're talking about the white paper reforms. Those white paper reforms for you and I are kind of like the Holy Grail. So I started to kind of go, okay, we all know the white paper reforms are inside of this budget. This includes some financial information that we are looking for as dinar holders. It also is a very good insight into why the budget deficit is so large. So as I kept reading this article, I actually had to read this article twice. We all know that the white paper is good for us. But what we do not know, and it also came as kind of a surprise, is the reason for delay. If the reason for the delay is controversial and has a lot to do with reforms, and we also know now that inside of the budget, they're trying to remove the salaries of the 3 presidencies, and they're also trying to remove certain salaries from inside of it because that's fiscal budgetary planning. That actually constrains the budget more, and it makes it more like a normal running country, right? Like every year, we don't basically have to go, well, should we pay our military? No, we're not going to pay them. Every year, we have a budgetary piece that comes up, and basically, it's just a pro forma activity. They just sign it. It gives a little bit of bump to our men and women in arms, hopefully. And it also, what it does, it just keeps the country rolling through defense spending, different portfolio bills inside of it and stuff like that. But what I thought it was really odd is that some of these Iraqi institutional players, such as the 3 presidencies and some salaries, being removed from the budget to create less deficit and also make it more fiscally efficient, if that makes sense. Kind of like we don't have to save up to pay these people. We already have the money earmarked for it. We're going to do that. Now, what is crucial? What is crucial for us to realize, and what we need to happen are those white paper reforms to actually stop becoming kind of like the talk of the town and become like institutionalized. This is what we're doing. We want to see concrete proof of that. And that's why I think seeing this budget being not reformed, but being scrutinized is a good thing. It also gives you a layer of transparency. If you think about it, when they talk about opening up their budgetary books to the world, it would be very, very simple for them to say this could be the budget that opens all budget, especially if they're trying to pass fiscal responsibility and allow themselves to have some, what's the word I'm looking for? Outlining factors other than oil inside of that budget. Okay, and I'm going to get to that in a second too. I also thought it was quite interesting to note that because of the rise in the exchange rate of the dinar, there were two tax liabilities inside of the budget that were being scrutinized. One was to be amended in 1 year after something happened, and the other one was a tax responsibility that you have to pay no matter what. Okay, and it said there's a note the laws are trying to amend inside the budget. One is a temporary tax law or tax rate. Otherwise, in the tax laws are permanent, which affects the lower and middle class people. And for one reason, they might want to amend it. So I thought that was interesting. As early as today, I saw the Iraqi dinar exchanging for 144,500 dinar per $100. Okay. Like to note that earlier it had kind of dropped a little bit. It was 143,500 to the $100. Now somebody's going to say, well, that doesn't really matter to me. Like, I don't care. Well, you should, because there were articles that came out today that said we are talking about the ability to drop the 3 zeros off the currency. And inside of the article, I want people to understand that don't listen to this point and cut it off when I read this next sentence, because you're going to get frustrated. There were pros and cons. This was one of the cons that I'm going to read first. So continue listening to the discussion to understand where I'm coming from. The article states today saying they had no plans of deleting the zeros at this time. Economist named Saudi said in an interview that in Baghdad News, the monetary policy excludes the powers of central bank, and the financial policy is the sub-authority of the Ministry of Finance, meaning that autonomously speaking, the central bank by itself is its own entity, right? It can make its own decisions. A person or a group of people that work with that banking system would be the finance people, right? The finance ministry. I thought it was kind of interesting to note that there was a clear separation of power between the two. So the actual reality of dropping the 3 zeros is not a timing issue. It's really an issue if the central bank feels like it's time to drop the 3 zeros. And one thing that they said that they wanted to come out with was a new Iraqi dinar note of 100,000. So my thought process was, let's just say you were going to drop the 3 zeros off 100,000, which would make a $100 note. So they don't need a $100 note. But what if the thought process is, if they were to drop the 3 zeros off that note, if they were to introduce a $1,000 note? Think about it. Would it be totally kind of weird if they did? No, because we know that inflationary rise and stuff has gone up. Having that $1,000 bill is going to be if something costs 75. I don't know if people know how the marketplaces usually in the Middle East work, but they typically don't give change. They give you something extra with your purchase, or they'll give you a candy or extra fruit or a little bit more, but they don't really give change. You see what I'm saying? So if something costs $7,900 and you gave two $5,000 notes, they might say, well, what else do you need? Well, I kind of need a little bit of this. They might give you a little bit of that to make up the difference in cost. But if they had that $1,000 note, you could give them a 5, 2 1,000s, and then come out with you got a $500 note. You see what I'm saying? So it wouldn't be so crazy thinking that that might be the note that they try to come out with in the next little bit. Or they simply come out with what they said was a $100,000 note, and it be the bridge gap between large purchases. But I think a $100,000 note would be more for interbanking things as opposed to the people in the actual marketplace. And I think what they have to figure out is how do we solve marketplace liquidity and replace it with dinar over dollar. Also, what they were talking about said to make the currency relevant, dropping the 3 zeros would be absolutely the right thing to do. The reason for it is the Treasury at the present time said deleting the 3 zeros sooner as opposed to later by the central bank could even help out the exchange rate of the dollar because it would be subject to the power of the central bank. And it recently raised the decision inside the bank to raise the exchange rate. However, economist Safwan Quaze pointed out that the level of circulation of the dinar could stand having a new currency or issues should have at least 100,000 indicated by the response for the taxation of the currency. However, the central bank said a major point in saying to take these steps to delete the zeros of the currency would definitely raise the confidence of the people of Iraq and the usage of the Iraqi dinar inside of its marketplace. It gives so much confidence to the currency, Hazim Haddad said. Also stated that the failure of economic policy in the country in the past years has made Iraq open for imported goods. If they had more confidence in their own currency, they were saying it would help industrialize Iraq, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah, and I heard some moron on, no, I don't want to call him moron. He actually had a very good point. He's wrong. When we talk about deleting the 3 zeros, we're not talking about a lot introducing the currency because we're still going to have the old currency coincide with the new currency for 10 or 15 years. If it was a lot, they would simply cut the old currency off, introduce new currency, and that would be that. There's a difference between a redenomination and a lot. They're not the same thing. And I think the guy that was saying it was kind of meaning it to the point of, you know, Iraqi dinar is a scam. This is the reason why. And he actually brought, and he was actually bringing up some good points. I mean, he wasn't wrong, but it's kind of like, has anybody ever told you a joke and they leave out a part of it and it's not as funny? That's exactly what happened. He was making a point. He'd be like, well, you know, I'm telling you it's a scam. I'm telling you it's this. I'm telling you that. And I'm right because I told you they're going to devalue their currency. Well, we all knew they were going to devalue their currency. That wasn't like earth-shattering super news. I mean, we knew that to cover the bridge gap, they were going to devalue their currency so that they could cover their outstanding deficit and pay their employees. So that wasn't it. So what happens, like when they say in the article that they don't plan on leaving it at this 1450 or whatever, they're talking about taking it to 1470. And when it hits this 1470 number, bringing it all the way back slowly but surely. Hey, Ms. Deborah, slowly but surely they're trying to bring all that number back down to 1200 and all. See what I'm saying? So this 1470 is a stop or it's a band-aid for a bigger problem. Does that make sense? They're just trying to create some liquidity. That's all they're trying to do. Now, anybody got any comments, questions, something rattling around your brain that didn't make sense in this conversation? Come on, guys, ask, please. There's no harm in asking. There's no harm in making a comment. That's why we're here, is to talk about this. With us having a better understanding, it gives us greater confidence and greater energy towards this. So please, Nicole, you want to say something? Say it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, we always talk about what's going, you know, what it means when certain things happen, but we haven't theorized a lot on what do we think would happen in country if it did reinstate, as far as, was that a good thing for the, I mean, it's a good thing for us, but would that be a good thing for Iraqis because of just the corruption? Have they gotten rid of enough of it so that they could actually take that money and put it to use? I mean, I almost want to think, would it be mass immigration into the country for the Iraqis who have fled? Or would it be mass immigration outside the country? Or would they just hurry up and change all the dinars and the dollars? They're thinking it's not going to last. I mean, we'd kind of just be theorizing on it. But I do kind of wonder, is that why it hasn't, you know, revalued or reinstated yet? Because, you know, what are the consequences for the people in country?
You know, I think that's a very good thought. And Pamela, were you going to say something?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, how you doing? Good to hear from you. Hey, I said, hey, Mr. Jeff. I said, hey, Reggie. Hey, Marco. Hey, Alfred. Hey, Jerome. Hey, Josh. Hey, Christy. Hey, Demarius. Hey, Emery. And hey, 706.
Oh.
Good to have you guys here. I would like to run down that rabbit hole for a few minutes, if you don't mind. Okay, I think that's a very interesting question. And the only way that I kind of have to kind of think about it is, do you remember when I believe it was Great Britain or one of those European countries when they changed over to the euro? Remember that? And my thought process there is that Iraq kind of would be the same thing. At first, it would be confusing. Like, okay, so instead, if I give you this $5,000 note, if the zeros are deleted off of it, is it $50 or is it still 5,000? You know what I mean? I think you might have some kind of confusion there, and I don't think the people would really kind of feel like instantly prosperous. I don't believe that at all. I really think that for a while, Iraqis would kind of feel kind of in disbelief, if that makes sense. Like, oh, okay, so what does this mean? And I know that we always talk about the re-education of Iraqis to certain things, but I don't think anybody real touches upon the fact of what does deletion of the 3 zeros mean? What does this mean as far as purchasing power goes? What is purchasing power inside of Iraq? And what does that look like? You see what I'm saying? I think Iraqis it would probably take at least 2 to 5 years for them to really understand what they've been hiding inside their mattress for all these years, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And someone just gave a good question here. Hang on here. Chat said, won't it give them more purchasing power though? Yeah, but define what purchasing power inside of Iraq would be. You can already go inside of the marketplace and buy groceries. You can buy a car. You can buy a home. You see what I'm saying? It's not like they're denied certain things. It just means that the money that they have would stretch further. Instead of me having to go down to the bank with a wheelbarrow full of money, that wheelbarrow full of money would actually have some value to it. Okay? So that's okay, I'll give you an example. Whose phone is that? I'm gonna get you to cut that off. Ernestine Carolyn, you're gonna get muted. I'm sorry here. I hate to do it. Okay, that's not you because you're just joining. Okay, it must be Emery here. Emery.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I can mute you. Don't mean to be mean, but I had to mute you because last thing somebody got mad at us and said, "Can you not wash your dishes or cook while we're doing the Zoom?" I'm like, "Oh, hey, look, man, it's supposed to be fun. Don't get so serious. It's all good." But you know what I mean? Like, calm down, Skipper. It's gonna be okay. But I think the other thought process I would have you is, and maybe one of you guys could correct me. What would you do if you'd have won the lottery this weekend for $530 million? Do you see the thought process? Like, you can already maybe you have good credit and maybe you already have a nice house and you have certain things, but could you imagine having wealth now, and what would you do with it? That's kind of what I think the average Iraqi would be like. Wait a minute.
I'd go through a period of shock where I would have to emotionally acclimate to the fact that, you know, my lifestyle changed, my accessibility to resources changed, you know, and that's not even to say, you know, just the positive and negative repercussions, all of it. Like, there would be a literal emotional acclimation period, I would think.
I think you would also see like a total disbandment of rioting, right? For a while. Like, people would physically be like at home. Like, and they would probably be having this discussion with their loved ones, their moms or dads, sons, daughters. I could see a huge rise in the educational system inside of Iraq. Like, those Iraqis that maybe were laborers, them trying to force them back to school to get some type of financial literacy going on. You know what I mean? Because what happens to lottery winners is typically 3 to 5 years they're broke again. So that can very well happen inside of Iraq. Everybody that's in Bahrain, everybody that's in Kuwait is not a multimillionaire. I'm sure there's a lot of them, or even Dubai. I'm sure there's poor people in Dubai, or there's a ghetto in Dubai, if there is such a thing. It's not everything can be $1 million. You know what I mean? So I think that poses a very great psychological question of, and then what happens to the marketplace? Do now they start doing stuff more if they're using open air markets, or now they're using shopping centers? Do you see mass industrialism going on? The shape of actual Iraq would change, and I don't know if it would be the next Dubai, but I could tell you there would be a definite vested interest from people like China, Germany, United States, France, that would try probably colonization. You could see them really trying to go in there and be like, our way is the best way. Do like us. Our way is the best way. And them going through some type of civil, probably inner quarreling. You know what I mean? Are we going to be all the way Muslim? What happens to the Christians there? What happens to the Shias? What happens to the Sunni? All of a sudden, when the winds of finance change and all of a sudden you have a windfall, I do believe that you have some definite quarreling. You know what I mean? And like Megan said, definitely psychologically speaking, the average Iraqi who's just trying to earn a buck is going to go, I've held on to the 700 million dinars. That was all I had. Now I've got money. Moving on up. You know what I mean? I mean, what's going to happen? You know what I mean?
Right. And I feel like too, as a collective consciousness, is the country itself would be a collective consciousness at that point. And yeah, I mean, you're not just dealing with how does the average person handle money? You're dealing with also, how is the government going to handle it? How's every bit of infrastructure in this basically brand spanking new buildup going to function? Because now they have to make sure they line everything up, which is going to be a tremendous amount of pressure. Make sure everything you said you could do, you can in fact carry out, because the people are going to be watching you now, and they're not going to be satisfied if one day they're a millionaire and the next day they wake up and they're back to broke. They won't take that.
Or if they have all this money and you go back to not having basic human necessities like water and Wi-Fi and electricity, that would be totally unexcusable. You know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. Why don't we have why doesn't every home have, we take it for granted, like air conditioning? You see what I'm saying? Why don't we have milk, bread, butter? Why when I go to the marketplace, I don't see made in Iraq? Why am I buying this cheap Iranian crap? Why am I forced to buy it in my marketplace when I obviously now am a civil nation with a very noble dinar that holds weight? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a very, I don't want to call it menacing, but it's almost kind of like, wow, It's a great question.
Thank you. I think that what'll happen too is that, I would do this if my money has been worth nothing for so long. As soon as it reinstated, I'm going to flip everything over to either British pounds or euro or dollars, but I'm taking everything out of dinar, or as most of it, even though it's worth more, just because these other currencies don't have a history of dropping like the Iraqi dinar did. So that may happen too.
You may have exodus, but I would venture to guess that they would probably put it more like in Turkish lira, and I think they'd probably put it into probably Iranian rial. And the reason for it is, like we talked about in the last one, the interest rate inside the bank is so good.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you went over there with your millions of dollars and they're like, oh, heck yeah, we'll take your money, and you put this in your bank, I'm getting my 25% interest, then you can always convert it back and get because it's just a drive away. You know what I mean? So I could see exodus happening. I always struggle with the thought of Iraq adopting, let me put it like this. The average Iraqi adopting stuff like the euro, like the franc, they know dollars though. So I could see them putting it in dollars, but I could see some of them saying, I ain't never been to London. I don't know if I trust this deal. Like, I've never been here, but I have been to Turkey on vacation, or I've been to Iran. I know what's going on there, and I know the system's there. So I can see me doing that. But another question that I would have, how do you think they're going to feel when all these Chinese companies come in here and they're going to want to put in all this infrastructure as far as like Wi-Fi and electricity? You know, think about that. Like when you become, remember, the light bulb only became the light bulb after so much time. You know what I mean? There was an article I read about this guy that was one of the people that when the telephone first came out, and they were like, this was way back when the telephone was first invented. He said, I could actually see a time when a telephone is something that every person has one. You keep it in your pocket, and it will even have ways that you can see each other and talk. It'll be probably one of the best inventions. This was like in 1920, whatever the phone, I mean, early days. I'm not talking like, 2000, I'm talking about early days, because I could actually see one day a person looking at their phone with no dials, no buttons, and speaking to another person face to face. And then lo and behold, we all carry a phone. I think that's going to be interesting because, A, I don't think it'll take long for them to catch on to the financial literacy and accept and adopt these new things into their life because they're a younger populace. If they were an aging populace, I would say it would be almost probably like Nicole said, I could see them running out of the country because they saw all this bad stuff. You see what I'm saying? And they would say, oh, look, I'm not going through this Saddam Hussein crap again. I'm out of here. But they're younger and they have a national view. I could see them saying, I want to rebuild Iraq and make Iraq great again. Or I want to make this Iraq the best Iraq it could ever be, whatever that means. Anybody else want to say something on that? That's a pretty interesting thought.
I feel like there's going to be an initial a very distrustful sort of insecurity, because I don't know if I had lived in certain conditions my entire existence or for a chunk of my existence, and a foreign country came in and started promising me all this, I would wonder whether or not it was too good to be true.
I always make the joke of, you ever been to like Mexico or been to a foreign country? And some people have been blessed to live abroad, but I can always remember like when I was in Sweden and when they gave us Krona, and I remember getting this money and it's big and it's colorful paper. I remember thinking, this can't be money. Like, there's no way this is money. There's no way. And I kind of feel like that kind of shock. Like if I was an Iraqi and then like I went to like, let's say, I don't know, London or England or anywhere, Mexico for vacation, and they give them all this peso and them looking at like, well, this is junk. This isn't even real money. You know what I mean? So I think there'll definitely be a culture shock, Does anybody want to say anything else on this before we go to the next topic? Okay, I thought this was super interesting. Iraq has done something that I didn't think was possible. They took an asset that they haven't harvested. They actually sold it to somebody pre-production scale. So they basically, the development that happened about a week ago, Iraq made a deal with Chinese companies. In doing so, they had an opportunity to do business. They were bidding this against the European countries and against the Chinese company to pre-sell oil. The committed allotment was that they basically get a loan, or they're going to be prepaid up front for this oil, and they're going to provide basically 130,000 barrels of crude a day, and that will be for the next 5 years. But they will get an upfront payment of $2 billion. They're saying that Iraq at first had problems working out the deal because it had never been done, and the difficulty was to get a government to trust them. And obviously, they found that trust within the European brands or companies, the European companies, and also they found that trust within the Chinese company. Overall, the first contract was awarded to the Chinese companies, and it wasn't the government. They called them companies. And they said that it was extraordinary to do so, to think of futures in this sense, because I don't work in that tradition. And they were really, really impressed because they said if they could do that with this, they were wondering if they could somehow devise an oil-based bond market. So imagine them taking oil and pre-selling it and creating bonds out of it where interest could be earned on it. And then a way it'd be another source of them to have another income. Now, I know as far as OPEC sales are concerned, it's not illegal to do so. And we know that within that organization, they beat out Saudi Arabia in its production, the stuff that comes to the United States. So I just kind of want to know your guys' thought on how do you feel about this new oil money up front, pre-selling it before it's even done? How do you think it will affect OPEC? And do you think that this will become kind of like Iraq's new norm when they get in a money crunch?
I think it's bad for us. I think it's bad for us. Point blank, period.
Why do you think it's bad for us, Albert?
They're finding ways to get out of the corner that they have put themselves in. I don't think it will benefit the people. I don't think it'll benefit our investment. I just think that it would benefit the greedy. That's just my opinion.
No, and that's what I asked for. I mean, I don't know either, really. I mean, I'm just giving my opinion. I think it's really interesting that the Ministry of Oil, which has had such a long-standing chain of corruption, is now going to be able to pre-sell asset under contract and is working outside of OPEC and the watchful eye of the United States government. I think it's just very curious, and it's really ironic that they didn't do it in Europe. Okay, and you're probably going, why Europe? Because Europe has a more westernized traditional view of trade, transparency. They chose to do it with China first, and China's always kind of known as being sneaky, kind of like everything's on the up and up. Where's the $2 billion coming from? They're getting it in dollars, and that money goes inside of SOMO. So if it goes inside of SOMO, to spend it, they still have to ask the United States permission for a while. But after a while, you can really see a problem developing between the Iraqi government, the U.S. government of, hey, I did all this work, I'm selling all this oil, where's my money? And you can see some waves start to be created, and then how the Biden-Harris administration is going to deal with those waves. And I'm not blaming them. If it would have been Trump, I'd have said the same thing. How would the Trump administration deal with it? It's their oil to sell. You know, and the only good thing they did was sell it inside of SOMO. At least that way we can watch it. But for them to have that type of negotiating prowess is kind of scary.
At a certain point, the international community needs to hold them accountable. Pay your bills, period. Don't keep allowing them to keep kicking the proverbial can down the road. And I feel that's what this deal is. It's allowing them to just keep up the same OBS.
Well, can I say this though? To pay their bills, what if they have this $2 billion? Now they can pay their bills. Shouldn't at that point they be responsible for their own cash flow? Or do we take the finger off the button and say, no, we have to watch Iraq because there is greed, there is stealing, there is infighting amongst tribes, there is stealing amongst the government. No, we're going to watch them to make sure they're going to do what they're supposed to do. Another excellent question. You know what I mean? Like, at what point does the United States take its finger off of the backs of Iraq and allow them to be truly sovereign? Because we obviously know we don't control their money. They devalued it. We obviously know we can't control their government because we've tried influence. We obviously know that we can't really get away with too much inside of Iraq with there being massive unrest. So at what point do we say, look, we're not listening to the United States that much anyway. Why does the United States take their finger off of Iraq and allow Iraq to reinstate it's something and them to be in control of their own system?
So I have a question.
Shoot. Huh?
So they like the money that they were holding, they gave that back to them, right? Plus they remove it.
That's two deals. Yes, Miss Deborah. Yeah.
So and they're pulling some of the soldiers out. So aren't they in a way kind of trying to like pull back a little bit or no?
Well, okay. In theory, yes, absolutely they are. But they're just going to replace those soldiers with United Nations soldiers, right? See, the guys in staying there is saying we're fighting ISIS. That's kind of like a country occupying the United States and saying we're going to get rid of white supremacist terrorism. We're going to get rid of the Bloods. We're going to get rid of the Clips. We're going to get rid of the Klan. We're going to get rid of the Black Panther Party. We're going to get rid of Antifa, BLM. We're going to have another country come here and monitor us until we get rid of all of that. Well, it'll never get rid of that.
They would never leave.
It's here. It's how you deal with it in country at that point, right? Fairness isn't the question, but it's just here. So I think for us, we really got to say to ourselves, what are we doing in Syria? 20-year war. What are we doing in Syria? What are we doing there? You know, now, if we sign this universal peace plan, at what point do we take our hands off of Iraq and say, all right, baby, go out there and be a grown-up. Goodbye. Because my thought process is that the United States was somehow waiting for them to say, okay, look, we've got a hold of our banking and our currency. And when we get a hold of the banking part, then that makes you an adult because it'll make you have some type of responsibility. Now we're going to give you the idea of you're free, right? But that can't be it. There's got to be another thing that they're holding on to. And I think it's energy, personally. I don't think they'll ever stop dabbling in Iraq.
So, Mr. Brando, I have a question.
Shoot.
So do you think that for us to give Iraq back that money, it kind of lessened our position of power as far as our negotiating power? Or do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. And let's have a little dialogue on that. I'll give you an example. Let's say I owe you $1,000. No, I'll make it a better $10,000. No, it's $100,000. Okay? And you know that I'm holding your $100,000 in the bank. And you know it's there because I've got your money in the call. I got it. But I'm going to give you $50. Are you going to be nice to me? Or are you going to unleash the Nicole that I know how Nicole can be? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
No, you're going to play along. And sometimes I'll say, okay, Nicole, I feel extra nice. Here's $150. And you're going to go, okay. You're still my favorite, Mr. Brando. I love you. You're my friend. But then after that goes on so long, you're just going to be like, dude, I'll never get my money out of this deal. You think the United States is ever going to recoup the money they spent on Iraq? Honestly?
No.
No. God, no. The only thing that it will do is enrich some people's lives. I think of this selfishly. When we think of Iraq ultimately being successful, folks, nobody in this room thinks of Iraq as being successful. They don't. We don't. We think of what Iraq's money being successful that makes us successful, and it's under the guise or the facade that, oh, Iraq made it, yay. But as soon as Iraq's money comes to some type of value, or their stock market comes to some value for people that hold LISX with us, you're going to say, oh, man, this is awesome. I'm successful. You're not going to call Iraq and say, hey, thanks, Kazemi. You did a great job, man. It only took you 22 years or whatever it is. Great job, guys. See you later. You're not going to ever talk about it. You'll never tell us all you made your money in the NAR. You'll never say how you get all this money coming to ISX. You'll never mention probably Iraq as long as you live.
Never.
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 So yes, we totally weakened our hand by giving them any opportunity to control their own money. If we were going to actually hold it as a negotiation, or as some people would say, the carrot and the stick, heck yeah. You think I'm going to mind you if you don't have control over my money? I'm going to knuck if I buck. I'm going to do what I want.
Well, I noticed they put out an arrest warrant for the president as soon as they got that money.
Well, and okay, can I say this? So did Iran, and so did the UN. The UN's put out an arrest warrant.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm not trying to say it to even be mean. It's like, when do you grow a pair, Iraq? Come on. You can't arrest the corrupt individuals that you know about inside of your own country. let alone go after the president of the United States of America. Like him or don't like him, he's still the president.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying?
I have another quick question. What do you think about this article that came out about that we this week we exported zero oil from both Iraq and Saudi Arabia? What do you think?
Yeah, we received zero oil.
We didn't export any oil from Iraq or Saudi Arabia this week. Zero exports.
It's kind of funny. The reason why I think that's funny is because remember when we had the energy crisis earlier this year and energy dropped all the way down to zero and people were saying, oh, they're running out of oil. No, they're not running out of oil. They actually have too much oil. I think that's what, when the United States decided to enter in the energy game, those countries are our competition.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So it's either sell that oil or consume it ourselves. It probably costs less for our own consumption of our own energy. Not probably, it does, because there's no exporting or importing it. So it hurts. Okay, there's two players in the energy game that you really want to keep around. One's the United States and one's China, because we consume more energy than anybody else. So with us out of the need of Saudi oil or American oil, those Middle Eastern countries are going to have to sell that to somebody. And I really expect two players to emerge from that. One being Russia, one being China. They're going to step up and say, "Oh, America doesn't want to buy. I'll buy it. I'll buy all of it, and I'll buy it for as long as I can," because they know, like we know, he who buys the oil brings you to a table of different things, such as arms, grains, agriculture, infrastructure, banking. Do you think people are going to be conscious about a Russian embassy going inside of the middle of Baghdad? Heck, that's going to be front page news. You'll see that happen if Russia starts to buy the oil that we don't buy from them. The Saudis are big with us with arms. What's going to happen is if we don't buy their arms, you don't think those guys are going to sit around and say, who am I going to sell this to? Russia's got arms. Hell, Vietnam's got arms. Anybody with some type of technical experience, India, think about this. What if India consumed that oil? India is going to be the next major industrialist thing in the whole world. India. It's on the verge right now. India is China. They just don't know they're China yet. And when India gets that realization, and don't think, and listen, India's actually dumbed itself down, because at first when the Americans needed, we needed doctors and we needed skilled craft people, technical, what do you call it? Not computer smart. You know what I'm saying? When we wanted those people from India, we imported all they had and took them for years and years and years. If you go to a doctor nowadays, I remember when I was a little kid, all the doctors were, people of American descent, white, black, or indifferent, mostly white, right? Now, my doctor's name is Dr. Rahman. Heck, my head clinical specialist for my own company, her name's Dr. Sophie. And she's of Indian descent and love her to death. She's a skilled physician. But think about this. They've dumbed themselves down to, we're going to industrialize the country. Usually that's the very first thing a country does when they're about to get a big boom. Industry. What are we going to make and sell to people that they're going to buy? Now, since they've sold all the smart people off, now they're saying, hey, look, what about all these other people that we have that are skilled? They make products, we make them cheaper, we make them faster. What does that run on? It runs on energy. If India is not on your list of, maybe it's getting into their exchange at first. Instead of buying currency, I'm going to say this. I would always look at someone's stock exchange and say, I'm going to get into their stock exchange before I get into anything else. A successful exchange system at that point, one that's traded at least in London or somewhere else, I can see being involved in. The reason for that is typically a sophisticated banking system starts with currency and how they deal with international customers buying their stuff, especially to a stock. So I would definitely keep an eye on India. I got a question for all of you guys on that. Okay, sorry about that. My question for that would be for you guys. What do you think is going to happen if they don't figure out a way to get rid of this deficit within the next couple weeks? How long do you think they'll stretch out not having a budget ready before there's a total collapse in country?
Not gonna last to the end of the month.
I don't personally think there's going to be a collapse. And the reason why I don't think that is because with them joining the Arab Parliament, I think that now a lot more countries have a very strong vested interest in seeing them succeed, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, Egypt, and possibly even Israel.
Did you read
So-
that paper that we put in that thing about what the Arab Parliament's goal was?
No, I don't know what their goal is.
Of one Arab currency.
Oh, okay. So that's why I don't think it's they can't. They cannot allow them to fail. I think that what they're going to do is the countries that are successful around them, like Saudi and Jordan, and I think they're going to say, we'll help you. We're going to get you out of this, but you got to let us take over for a minute and let us show you what to do. Because I mean, they've been taken over by the hostiles like Iran, but people who want to assist, like Saudi and places like that, they're friendly with instead of hostile. And also, I don't think that Iran's going to mess with Saudi the way they're messing with Iraq, because Saudi's army is just as big as Iran's, if not larger. And then, of course, they also have Egypt, and Egypt has a state of the art army, and they're also part of the Arab Parliament. So that's why I say, I mean, I know all Iraq wants is sovereignty, but no one wants sovereignty at the expense of failing. So
Right.
I want to make sure my country is safe and Iran can't get their claws back in. So I'd rather have someone who at least I think is friendly to me help me, not take over, but help.
Right.
So that's what I kind of think is, that's my thought on it.
I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
I don't disagree at all. Alfred, did you have something you wanted to say? So for the last 10 minutes, Kay, I want to talk about business. Just business. And anybody, first before I start with my question, do any of you have a question about business? Did any of you guys look up some of the stuff we talked about last week about business? Whatever you did, I see your head shaking yes. Okay, cool. Do you have a question about anything? Well, I do. I have a question for everybody. Go ahead.
I don't say have like a question. Like I did look up stuff though.
Okay, cool. At least you got started, right?
And I also start reading the business plan too.
Okay, I have a special need. If any of you guys know someone that can write grants, I need someone that can write a grant for me. And I'll discuss it with some business partners that I have, namely Pagan, but I need someone that can write a grant. So if you guys know anybody that can write a grant and you guys are listening to this show on YouTube, or even you guys, if you know someone that can write a grant, please introduce them to me.
I can direct you to a place where the grants and it's extremely inexpensive. We can talk afterwards.
Awesome. That's exactly.
Hey, Brando, just to give you another alternative, I personally know a lady that's out there in Texas that also can do that as well.
After the show, please DM me. You guys are on Facebook. Something, hit me up, please. I need a grant writer, and we have an idea for something. And right now, with what's going on, I could really use it. At least start getting on start on the project and asking questions and stuff like that. Shush, kitty cat dog, you. Not done. Shush. Get out of my office. She don't know a grant writer either. So we were talking about business, and before I think anybody wants to get involved in a business, I think a question that I should ask you is, do all of you have a tax plan? I think before you ever jump into some business and blow a bunch of money, I think you first have to have a plan for tax.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I think you really need to sit down and say, what's my liability? How much am I in this for? How much is good tax service going to cost me? Right? How much am I willing to invest in either avoidance of taxes? I mean, legally, of course, just not paying. I mean, legally. Or how much am I really willing to give up of my new hard-earned money in taxable dollars? So I'm going to ask each of you, do you have a tax plan? I know
I do.
several of you do. Okay. You need to take either your phone or I keep a white piece of paper and a little pen when I'm doing business stuff, and I write these jobs. Like I see Pamela writing stuff down. Write this down. Now, if you're thinking about becoming a nonprofit, if that's your taxable escape, remember you're still going to have tax from you to the donation. Does that make sense? Because if it's going from you to there, without that bridge, it's still going to be taxed on your end as personal income. Okay? So whether you want to figure out how to become that entity beforehand or afterhand, you need to start letting those wheels of steel turn now. Does that make sense? In preparation for anything, proper preparation prevents failure. I always screwed up when I told people, oh man, just become a business. When you're a business, oh, everything's great. Don't pay this tax. That's not true. What I meant to say, or what I should have conveyed to you is, by becoming a business gives you some tax advantages as far as deferring the tax in certain ways, but it doesn't make you tax exempt. Okay? If you're an S corporation, what it does is it gives you a layer of protection between you and another entity. A lot of people have, I'll give you an example, like a tax lien against them. A lot of people have child support. A lot of people have all this stuff. By putting your money inside of a corporation, it gives you some bearance between that person and your liability. That's one good thing that a company does, but it's not like you're not going to pay tax. You pay tax just like you're an individual. LLC, same thing. And no, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just sitting here talking about 27 of my closest friends about fun things like money. That's it. Are we all in agreement? Somebody say yes.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I want you to think of this as in how am I going to not pay tax or as little tax as possible? The next thing I want you to think about is, if I am going to pay tax, how do I want to pay it? Okay. The third thing is, I don't want you to open up a business that you have not thought of for at least 6 months to a year. I want you to live on the exact same amount of money you are living on now, if at all possible. Now, if your living conditions are poor, transportation's poor, healthcare is poor, something like that, I want you to correct those things, but you don't need to rush out and go buy a Bentley or a boat or a mansion. Okay?
No.
I don't want you to do that. I want you to take at least 6 months to a year, and this 6 months can start now. And I want you to start jotting down ideas. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not good at. And the reason for it is a big failure in people that get inheritances or lotteries. They think, oh, dang, I'm going to start a clothing line. Oh, this is awesome. I'm going to put $150,000 into it. No sweat off my back. I'm going to hire staff. I'm going to do all this. Staff costs you 10, 15 grand a month. You got fabrics to buy. You're traveling to Paris, Rome, travel expenses. You're taking personal assistance. You're bleeding yourself dry before you ever get anything out of it. You see what I'm getting at? But if you have a plan, one is to reserve as much of your taxable dollars in your pocket as possible, and B, have a real idea of something that's going to produce income as soon as possible, then enter in those things first. If your idea of going out and buying a 7-bedroom, 5.5 bath, 5-car garage, and it's just you or you and your significant other and your kids aren't at home, What are you buying that for? You could buy one house reasonable and then go buy another reasonable house somewhere else that you could vacation in. So if you do spend time in two places, you're not always in the same place. You could have a creative space and one can help you pay for the other. You could use the other as an Airbnb. You could use it as some other write-off, something else that you could use as help you out with your tax liability. But I don't want you to buy some single family dwelling that's 10,000 square feet with 18 Bentleys. Once you get your taxes done, once you've got your business done, instead of going out and purchasing that new car, new motorcycle, new boat, heck, Birkin bag. So I see a lot of ladies in here. Fellas, that new Audemars Piguet, that Vacheron Constantine. Shoot, my 735, McLaren. Why don't you rent it and drive it, or you can rent a bag for a couple days, let it sit on your arm. See how it feels. It doesn't matter if it's used. Lease it, borrow it. Because you may drive that big old Phantom and say, I don't like this. I think a lot of you are going to come to the fact that maybe you don't want to drive, but you may want to be driven. If you lease that vehicle, you can write that off, as well as now you have your company, that driver as an employee of your company. So do you know why smart people don't, or excuse me, ultimately smart, successful people don't drive? Because it leaves their hands free to take notes and write and read and do things that driving would otherwise make them think about something. Do you see what I mean about having a plan? Maybe one of your plans is, you know what? I'm gonna get myself solid. I'm gonna get my everything great. I got my tax thing kind of structured out. I know I want to do this business, or I have this idea. The reason why I want you to get involved in a business is not to throw a bunch of money at something and let it fail, because people that are ultimately successful don't just sit around and spend money. Idle hands are bad. And just because you got $50 million, you can blow it in a month and never know it. But if you got something to do other that keeps you creative and keeps you motivated, you're less likely to spend the money, unless at that point you're investing in yourself and your business, than you otherwise be wasting it shopping at the mall and hanging out with friends and stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? Stay away from shifty consultants that, oh, I'm going to solve all your problems. I'm going to help you out. Just pay me $10,000. Yes, do your research. Do I need this consultant? Is this something I can't do the research on my own? Is this something that maybe I can't ask Mr. Brando to get on YouTube and ask for someone to help me that maybe we trust more? Or I know somebody like a Brando that's going to sit there and you can ask Megan, give that person all the praise in the world, or if they need that grade A ass chewing, who's not afraid to give it. And before you spend a dime on big purchases, I want you to at least say, especially places that you're not going to be at all the time, I want you to go there and visit there for 1 month. If you got all the money in the world, you can call this a business trip. If you want to move to Italy, go stay there a month before you buy that villa. You want to live in New York, Manhattan? Go to New York. What if you realize New York smells? It's busy. It's noisy. You want to live in LA? You want to make movies? Go live in LA. It's busy. It's noisy. It's a different lifestyle.
Dangerous.
Or you want to, huh?
So it's dangerous too.
It's dangerous. You want to live in Texas on a ranch? Go be isolated in the woods like Wyoming, like Kanye West, and make sure that's what you want to do. Now,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Before you go too far?
Yes.
One thing that people need to realize and understand. Have you all ever ran across somebody that's trying to sell you a service and they know that you have the money? Have you ever noticed how aggressive they get? So what do you think is going to happen once this investment pays off? You need to learn how to practice restraint, learn how to tell people no. Stand firm on it. If I tell you, let me think about it, that's what the hell I mean. Let me think about it. Don't follow me. Don't know you can't call me. I'll call you.
I'm going to say this. You're going to have friends and you're going to have family. They're going to be feeling, they're going to put the heat on you. Man, you know, my little cousin TT, she just needs to go to college. You know, she needs to go to Harvard. Well, I'm sure she does. But TT's only in the 3rd grade. So why am I setting TT's college fund up right now? You know what I mean? Let's talk about this. Let's see if TT can graduate from kindergarten before we put her in the Wharton Business School. Okay?
Right. She ain't going to Brown yet.
Not yet. You know what I mean? Or even if she is going to Brown, why don't we look at her grades? If I look at the things it's like this. Money is easy to get. It's easy. The way you're getting it, you didn't build anything, you didn't invent anything, you didn't do anything. So it's going to be, I'm rich. I'm worth $100 billion. Awesome. But guess what? It's harder to save.
Yes.
And I want you guys to learn this word and learn it well and repeat it after me. What is my ROI?
Yep.
And a lot
Mr.
of you are going to be
Brando.
like, what the hell is an ROI?
Return on investment.
That's right. For every dollar I put in, I want $3 back.
Pretty much.
Okay. And I'm telling you this because when you go get in front of Joe High Pressure, Susie High Pressure salesman, it's trying to sell you on, you should buy this mansion in the Catskills of New York because nobody ever goes there and it's so exclusive. Tom Cruise lives right next door to you. And then you go up there and you realize, I hate it here. I don't like any of the people. I don't like the snow. I don't like mountainous area. I don't know why I'm here. Now you've got this $20 million beast of a building that takes maintenance and a staff. How am I going to unload it? You're probably not going to get what you put into it out of it. You see what I'm saying?
I am so happy that somebody brought up the psychological warfare component of this, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people think about. Is just, when you get that kind of money, even like when we were talking about Iraq, what was going to happen to the people when all of a sudden they woke up and their entire environment changed, their entire lives changed, their government changes, their society changes. This is almost the exact same thing on a smaller scale, on a personal, individualized level. How are you going to respond to a dramatic change in your environment? And one of the things that Brandon and I talk about all the time, especially when we're talking about from like my personal perspective, what I've got invested, all of that is, I always tell him, I don't know if, I don't know what I would do. And a lot of times the advice he gives me every single time is be patient, wait, give yourself time to acclimate, get yourself healthy, and then acclimate, allow yourself to adapt to having money in a way that's healthy, not in a way that makes you see yourself as this new rebirthed person who's wealthy and will always be wealthy. Any sort of wealth acquisition is to learn how to manage it in a way that is not emotional. You don't want to make emotional purchases. The wealthy would, before they make a large purchase, will go visually see the thing they want and then wait 24 to 48 hours before actually purchasing it, because during that course, or during that time period, they're allowed to decompress emotionally from wanting to buy it to, do I need to buy it? And that is a very important aspect of what we're about to walk into, and a very important aspect too of the Noble Institution. We are a group of people who are all about to walk into something together where we can be kind of like a little support system. I find myself going back to Brandon all the time,
And me and Megan.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Nicole. But me and Megan a lot because we work together, and we just made a major purchase for our company, not to cut her off. But you could ask her, I vacillated over this purchase for 2 weeks, and it wasn't even $5,000, but I worried myself to death because I'm learning that I'm an empath. I take on the emotional feelings of what's going on around me, and I have a hard time separating my emotion from what I need and what I want, or if I like of the person. So Megan's telling you something because this is stuff that she not only practices, I practice with her. You can ask her. Friday for me was a brutal day. It was brutal. The other thing I want you to do, if you're gonna start talking about setting up a business, if you want to talk to someone that's set up a business, that's working through it, that's all these little pitfalls, things you want to know, just hit me up during the week. I don't work on Saturdays. You know what I mean? I don't work on Saturdays. You call me on a Saturday, you won't get the same brand you see right now. That's April's Day. Okay. But if you're like, hey, B, give me 30 minutes. What are some things that you've encountered since setting up your business? Are you profitable? How do you know what profitability looks like? How do you know if you're heading in the right directions? What does it take to set up a website? What does it take to maintain it? What does it take to mean? Because just putting up a website and saying I'm on the web, tell you the truth now with Google's new algorithm, it don't mean a squat of nothing. Is it better to advertise, or is it better to do this, or is it more efficient to do video ad? Is it more expensive? Is it less expensive to advertise on YouTube? If you have a product or a service, what's your target marketing audience? Who's your major customers going to be? You know? So if you have these questions and you want to start that ball rolling, get with me. Join the Noble Institution too, but get with me and let's get you to where you can see a business, how it functions, what it takes, what your day looks like. Because let me tell you this, just because you don't go to that 9 to 5, when you own a business, it's 24 hours.
Okay.
You're never off. You're never off business.
Yes, it is.
You're never off. You're never off. And I'm telling you now, if you're thinking, oh man, my husband or wife is going to do this with me, and guess what? We're going to do awesome. Not everybody's vision is your vision.
That's right.
Not everybody's path is meant to be the same. So if it's your business, you hire your own employees, you get with your people you want to do it with, and you make your dream realize for what it is. Not saying don't enable theirs. I'm not saying that with for consideration. But I'm saying that if it's your vision, you've got to walk your own path. Okay?
And check yourself. Make sure you have the emotional stamina to do it. This Iraqi Dinar investment is one of the best emotional training mechanisms I've ever seen for people who actually have an interest in building businesses, because it requires you to keep yourself in check emotionally, and it requires you to take the bad with the good and to take it constructively and unemotionally. So if you are actually considering this, make sure that you're honest with yourself. Can I handle this? If not, then there are a zillion different options that Brandon and I are more than happy to help you with that don't involve so much emotional pressure. Because we're not just here to sell you on putting yourself into a position emotionally where you're going to drown. We're also here to help you understand yourself well enough to say, hey, you know what? I don't think owning a business is my jive. Is there an option for me that's a little less emotionally intense?
Or a little less work, to be honest with you. Let's face it, we're not getting any younger. You see these grays? My daddy would say, I got them because I've been around here a long time. I say it's stress. You know, and I'm telling you this, a lot of you think you want to be a business. You don't. You love the idea of playing business. Oh, it's like Monopoly. Oh, I'm a big shot. Oh, I'm a big shot. Ha ha. Pick that up and 50 elbows bend and 50 asses step up. But that's not what being business is about. So a lot of you guys think about this. It's much better to have a better tax preparer than it is to own a multi-million-dollar company. It really is. Okay? It's less stress. It's a lot easier. And you'll understand yourself better. Okay? So first,
I have a question.
Shoot.
So, like you're saying, prepare yourself for the taxes. How do we, like, where should we start? Like, how do we find, like, where do we?
There's 2 places I would start. Number one, what do I need to exchange to get myself in a position that I can either hire a tax preparer, okay? Or number two, what am I going to do with this money that's going to help me avoid paying taxes? And those are simple things you can Google. 2 ways that you could actually do it right away is Google tax preparers or Google citizen by investment.
Okay.
And a lot of you aren't going to qualify for citizen by investment just because you simply don't have enough cash. If you have $500,000 and citizen by investment costs you $100,000, in theory, guess what, kids? You don't need to do that. That's a big chunk of your overall money. You don't need to do that. But there are other things you can do to get yourself in a position to where you don't have to worry about that. Okay? The other thing I want you to consider is this. If you figure out a business you want to do you want to live this business day and night? If this isn't something you can get on the phone at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 1 o'clock in the morning with the same, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? Did you check on this? Did you do this? Did we get this done? Did you do this? If you can't do that, you may not want to be in that business. Okay? You think you work hard now, you will work 10 times as hard trying to do your own thing. Now, we're hitting an hour and 15 minutes. If you want to talk about taxes off the air, you want to talk about this stuff, first I say join the Noble Institution. I always say that, but if you can't, hit us up. You know, I'll get you with somebody like Nicole that knows everything in the world there is to know about citizen by investment. This girl knows more about living in Russia than I think a Russian does. Or if you want to live in the Central America, you want to talk about how to emotionally build yourself up and put yourself in a position to where you can start with the nose, just like Alfred said. I'm going to get you with Megan. Megan is probably one of the best coaches you will ever have. That looks at something from a totally unbiased, who has a degree from the Mayo Institute. She's a behavior psychologist. Or if you want to talk to somebody with me about strategy or how to start saying no, okay? No is a big thing. Then hit me up. But let's start with our tax. Let's crawl before we open up Microsoft or Amazon, okay? Because I don't want to set you up for failure. I only want to set you up to win. Now it's 3:15. It's been a big day. Let's talk again next Sunday. And if any of y'all want to hit me up, DM me. If I don't answer, hit me on Telegram. Hit me somewhere. Now my phone beeps, so I know it'll beep. Now I had to fix it. But hit me up and let's chat, okay?
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Great
Have a
job.
good one.
Yet
have a
again.
good one, y'all.
Yeah. Have a great Sunday, guys.
Two.
Have a great Sunday.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.